Do we have an epidemic of loneliness?
Yeah, that's a good question. Everybody's global, everybody's connected, everybody's busy, we're all doing something, but then nobody's really here. That it's this sense of being here but not really.
My guest today is Monika Jiang, an expert on modern loneliness. She's a Berlin-based writer and community builder. In this episode, we talk about why big cities can make us feel lonelier, the stigma of being alone, and the difference between being alone versus feeling lonely.
Before that, there was only the word oneliness, and it spoke to this idea of feeling connected to yourself, but also feeling connected to others and something greater. We have to broaden and deepen our understanding of loneliness.
We also explore what it's like to grow up between cultures, and how she's navigated belonging in Germany as the daughter of Chinese immigrants.
Berlin is an incredibly transient place. Something there, right? You're a very successful person, you're building something, or from the outside, right, everything looks great. Still, relationally, there seems to be something that is missing. What is that loneliness that seems to be at the heart of a lot of people's lives right now?
Monika Jiang, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Do we have an epidemic of loneliness or modern loneliness?
The short answer is yes. Right.
How would you define modern loneliness?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the textbook definition says that loneliness describes a perceived lack of social connections, so connections to other people, either in quality or in quantity, meaning that either I feel like I don't have enough people in my life that I feel connected to, or I feel I have people, but I wish for more emotional depth or intimacy. And while this description is correct, I think it just doesn't suffice anymore in this modern world where there is now, we live in systems that have in many ways perpetuated our sense of isolation and separation. And in this part of the world, particularly the sense that we are on our own in a way. There's this idea of hyper-independence, and that has a lot to do with this modern loneliness of the feeling of, yes, there's a lot of people around me and on social media and so forth in the city, but still something is missing. And what is that? Yeah.
Before we used to live in cities or villages where we couldn't connect with the people who were on the other side of the city. If the city was a big one or if the village was too small, the next village was like maybe hours of walking. How come now with all the technology that we have, public transport systems, how come we are not connecting in the same way as we did before? Wouldn't it be like people were more lonely before, or they didn't feel lonely, or how come when having more tools we are feeling more disconnected from the others?
I think, when we just look at technology, because it's a good example, and you just mentioned it, right? This idea of right now we have the possibility to connect with everyone, everywhere in the world, and that has a lot of upsides in one ways, and it has enabled us to form new ways of even how we understand relationships and connections. But it also has really flattened and reduced the way that we understand connection in itself. Like it's a request on LinkedIn, it's a like, it's a share, it's a short message. The way that we communicate is differently now because of technology, because of the systems that are beneath that, and also how we interact. And I think it's this paradox of the idea of, there are so many options, right, to have, but I'm still lacking sort of the realness of it, or the depth or the purpose of the connection. It's kind of like we're more scattered and less perhaps meaningfully connected to one another. And it also connects a bit to the sense of I'm everywhere and nowhere. It's right, this idea of everybody's global, everybody's connected, everybody's busy, we're all doing something, but then nobody's really here.
Yeah.
And I think that is ultimately what is missing often. It's like, even if we're now in presence with one another, with our friends or with people physically in our village, or right, quote unquote, are we truly there, or are we thinking about something else? Are we kind of scrolling our phone? Are we wishing to be, it's like that. It's this sense of being here, but not really.
You grew up in Germany, but you have Chinese roots. Both of your parents are Chinese, and you were saying that 1/8 of yourself is is German.
Yeah.
What was your earliest moment when feeling, or what was your earliest memory of feeling apart, even when you were surrounded by people?
Yes. My earliest memory, I think, if I think about my childhood, I grew up in a small town at the border of Switzerland and France, and we were pretty much one of the two Asian families. Everybody else was, you're German, pretty much.
Yeah, if you would have grown up in Berlin, maybe there would have been a lot of Vietnamese, probably.
Yes, actually, it was a Vietnamese family in our town, which I'm very grateful just for representation.
Yeah.
We're not the only, but it was a very isolating experience in that sense, right? In terms of knowing that you are different, and at the same time, I've always felt like accepted, because I luckily have always had wonderful people around me and friendships. But inside of me, I always felt different and a bit alone in that. And also, I think inside of my family, I felt often lonely, as in not seen, and often misunderstood for how I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. So yeah.
I mean, the feeling of or feeling different than the others can make you feel like isolated, because you can think I'm different or something like that, right? Was it? Did you had, for example, problems on lacking the sense of belonging when you were living in those early years?
I think I still have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is, why I do this work, is that, and I've accepted it in the sense of not looking anymore for a certain place or a person or a job, for that matter, or anything that I feel like I need to attach myself to in order to get the sense of belonging, but almost take it as an invitation to live with it, with this question of, what is home to me, and who, and where do I feel like I now know that belonging can come in many different moments or spaces. It's not necessarily one thing, but yes, growing up, I wished it was different, right? I just wanted so badly. I mean, I shared this before. I really wanted to fit in, right? Which is not belonging, but I really, really wanted to fit in. I wanted to have blonde, long hair that was soft and blue eyes, right? I wanted us to eat bread and like all the normal things, quote unquote, normal things. Right? I wanted my parents to be in a certain way. I just wanted to be invisible and visible at the same time. I just wanted to I don't want to stand out in any ways. I just don't want to be different.
Yeah. To blend into the society.
Yes.
So, for example, I guess rice was part of everything you were, or like in every meal, probably, right?
Yes.
In your house. And in German households was like bread and bread. And yeah, okay.
Even though now and also back then I was like, I obviously know that our food, like we have, it's always hot food. That we have food is very, very important. Sharing food is differently in our culture, in Chinese or Asian culture, than in the German culture that I know of. So, but you don't see that, right? As a child, you're just like, can we just be like everybody else around me? Like, because my world is so small.
Yeah, I get the thing about the warm food. I mean, also we're coming from Mexico, also the thing of like people just eat warm, or some families, I don't want to generalize, but some families, they eat warm just once a day. And then it's like either muesli in the morning and Abendbrot in the evening. And for me, it's like only one warm meal. For me in Mexico, it's like breakfast is warm.
Yes.
Lunch is warm and dinner is warm. And just the snacks might be not warm, and this was like also a big shock for me.
Yeah.
Now with the time I appreciate that because it saves a lot of time just to cut some
That's
bread
true.
and put some spreads on the bread.
That's
and
the German way. It's like very efficient. It's like, it doesn't make sense. Why do you eat the same in the evening, in the morning? Like, there has to be more variety. And they're like, no, but it's just, it's
how
more
much time
efficient. Like,
you lose
okay,
cooking.
I see. But
And also, I mean, about the food, like if I can imagine that, or I don't know if it's also in Asian culture that if someone comes to visit, maybe they just came by to bring, I don't know, your mail or whatever, and they say, come inside, drink some tea. Oh, but I have to leave. No, come. You want something to eat, and then a simple 5-minute errand turn out to be like 2 hours.
Always, exactly. There's always like that's my memory from like walking into our home, and it always smells like there's something boiling on the stove.
Yeah.
There's always food, like there's this smell, which is which is lovely, and people are invited in. And when we had guests over, like my family or my parents used to I still do gather friends and families. Always, a whole group of people. It's also not just the food itself, but like how we share it, right? It's like there's always an abundance in a way. There's always more than enough. And it's a different way of coming together and enjoying it and connecting ultimately through that. Yeah.
I've seen this documentary about, I think it's called like Blue Areas or Blue
Zones.
Blue Zones. Yeah. And there's a lot of examples of how much people live in some Asian cultures because of the sense of community, right? Like in some islands, and they're like very close to their community, and the food they eat and the habits that they have in those areas helps them to live longer. And it shows that actually people who live in a community have a bigger sense of purpose, and the purpose keeps them alive. Also in United States, it was an example of 2 cities, like one next to the other, like just separated by the highway. And one had, in average, a longer life expectation. And what did they notice in that one is that they were Adventists. So because of their religion, they tend to eat more healthy. But at the same time, because of their religion, they tend to stay closer together, and that keep them alive.
Yeah. That reminds me of a study that was done, which is the longest study ever done on human flourishing. It's been going since more than 80 years. And they studied exactly this, basically, what is it that makes us live happier, but also longer and healthier? And no surprise, it is the quality of our relationships, right? It's kind of like the people who care for their relationships will ultimately flourish, but not just them, but also the people around them. And attached to that, I think, to your point of having purpose, it's purpose that is not just related to us as individuals, and like I want to become famous and rich, and like I want to do something and save the world, but it's like I want to show up for other people. I have meaning through being in relationship with others, because if we all thrive, I also thrive. If I thrive, others will as well. So there's that interrelatedness and interdependence that is so essential to not just our well-being, but really the quality of our life, and also why we are here and how we want to be here.
Yeah. And in which moment you decided loneliness is not just it's not a problem, it's something, or it's not just a problem, but it's something worth investigating, going deep dive into it? What was your motivation there?
Yeah, I think that loneliness has always been there, in my personal life. I mean, like in my life, and that I have always, I wanted to cover it up, I guess, or wanted to run away, compensate. So that I'm recognizing now and have been since I started this work, to also inquire for myself, where does this come from? Where does this come from? It's deeper. It's deeper than that. It's maybe even to some degree generational. So, I look at my family, my history, so where I come from, and it's not just mine. But then I recognize that there's something that I want to contribute in, because I spent a number of years in community building. I kind of fell into it in a way. And I was in touch with a lot of people from many different parts of the world. And we created these spaces for them to gather differently, for them to connect with each other. And repeatedly, I heard people say to me, because I was the community person, I was quite close with many people, I heard them say, I feel less alone here, right? Here I can be more like myself. I feel more relaxed. I feel less pressure to perform, if any. And I thought it was just really, there was something there, right? Something shared, and a shared experience that made me curious of like, oh, that means that you are missing something there, right? You're a very successful person, you're building something, or whatever you are from the outside, right? Everything looks great, but still relationally, there seems to be something that is missing. What is that loneliness that seemed to be at the heart of a lot of people's lives right now? And at the same time, looking at the world and being just, concerned of how we've become more atomized, more polarized. That fascism now these days is a word that we just say, in a sentence, and it's like, we agree, and it's there, and we're kind of we're not accepting it, but we, in some sense, we have to accept that it's part of our reality right now, and that in many ways we're repeating history, and that many people who feel lonely are, being drawn into these spaces because they promise a sense of belonging. So I saw that, this personal loneliness that people describe, even if not explicit, also has to do something with our collective and our structures and our systems. So that's what made me, it's like click, and like, okay, I need to do something.
It could be that fascism is a consequence of this feeling of loneliness, of modern loneliness, because what fascism offers you is like the sense of we against them. So we are whatever identity you want to adopt, but we are one, and gives you this like kind of power of community against the enemy that can be, I don't know, migrants or whatever they can think, or queer people or whatever, but gives them that sense of belonging into one common, I don't know, tribe of.
Exactly. And I think what's connected to that is that there's the sense of feeling seen and feeling heard, which translates to the other side of like, so long, right? Or more and more people feel neglected or abandoned, and they don't feel that. They don't feel seen. So if there's a leader, a party, a group of people who say like, here is where you are seen in your suffering, as in your fears, right? It's all fueled, of course, from fear, but also an idea of let's reclaim something back, right? There's a narrative of let's go back to something like this, which will give you a sense of being in the world again. You deserve a place. I think that is such a also relatable and human need that is understandable, and kind of turns the question to the other side to say like, well, if we want to counter fascism, right, how do we do that? Like, what are the narratives, but also the ways that we involve people again, that we make them feel seen and heard, because it's just not going to be enough to say we are not fascist or we're not those people, because then we're doing the same thing. Then we're also othering, and othering, it's just with othering there cannot be belonging, and that's sort of what I'm thinking. But
if you live in Germany, you have worked less than 12 months, or if you have bought a new computer, or if you have to travel more than 30 minutes to your workplace, well, maybe it's worth filing your tax refund in Germany, because I think you might receive a very good tax return. I know that we think that it might be very complicated, or some people are even scared of the Finanzamt, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. Everything depends on the tools that you're using. For example, I use Wundertax. Wundertax is an application that I use to do my tax declaration. With Wundertax, you can complete your entire tax return online. What's more, you can calculate your potential refund, see what deductions you're eligible for, and determine whether it's worth filing before you even start. For example, I did it last year and I got 500 euros back. And some people even say they got more than 1,000 euros. So if you go to gutentag.wundertags.de, Wundertags like Wonder Tags, but with a U, they even have the website in English, so it will be easier for you. And it will take you around 20 minutes or even less. Also, that's the best way also to support this podcast. Gutentag.wundertags.de. Thanks for our sponsor, Wundertags. And now let's continue with the conversation.
I like that word that you came up with loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
We have loneliness, and you call it loneliness. How do you?
So yeah, I didn't come up with it, but it actually oneliness is the word that existed before the word loneliness was invented, in the English language at least, around the 1800s. So before that, there was only the word oneliness, and it spoke to this idea of feeling connected to yourself, but also feeling connected to others and something greater. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily the opposite of loneliness, but I think it's a different understanding that loneliness is part of our human experience too. And there's no need to deny it. There's no need to fix it or just view it as a condition in that sense. And oneliness, I think I like because it just gives an idea of how that narrative could be thought of in a different way. So the possibility to reconnect with yourself, others, and something greater.
Okay, so but we had the word loneliness before that, or was it like the word evolved?
Yes. So no. So basically, maybe I can explain it again better. So first there was the word oneliness, and then around the 1800s, the word loneliness was invented because around that time we started to live in more maybe not isolated, but more atomized ways. Let's put it like that. And industrialization kicked in and so forth. So we needed a word, I guess, for that feeling, this experience of loneliness. And then what happened later is that loneliness very much and still is understood as something very shameful and something that carries a lot of stigma, where we say, oh, it's those people, it has nothing to do with me. We have a very clear image of who the quote unquote lonely people are. And there's sort of this pathologization of loneliness, is making it a condition.
Yeah.
And while there are absolutely cases where loneliness becomes a chronic thing, it has severe health issues mentally and physically and beyond. What I'm trying to do with my work and why I'm going back, quote unquote, to oneliness is to say maybe we can embrace loneliness again, as to say it is not just those people. We all feel lonely sometimes. And if we were to open ourselves to that truth, and if we would maybe even share that with one another in some ways, perhaps that would be a way to connect through that suffering almost, right? Through that suffering to find understanding, to say like, I'm not alone in this. I'm not alone in this loneliness. And I also feel like I'm missing something. I have friends, but still something is lacking, right? Or I am in a relationship romantically, but still I feel lonely sometimes, or I feel lonely with my partner, or whatever it is, right? Or I feel lonely in this new place that I moved into because I don't feel like I'm rooted really. So there's so many nuances of loneliness. So oneliness is an invitation to embrace that, but also to offer in a perspective to say, how can we reconnect more deeply with ourselves, which is a big part, but then also each other, and maybe even beyond something greater.
Yeah. So sometimes, that comes from an inner feeling. For example, when I am working on some projects and I don't have anyone to share those ideas or to actually share my enthusiasm about that, is a moment where I start feeling lonely. Even though I'm with friends or with my partner, or if I cannot communicate what is going on with myself, it's hard. You start to feel lonely. Therefore, they say, like, when you're for example, an entrepreneur, they say it's always a lonely path, because then you're just yourself with your ideas working, and all the other people that you consider your friends or your partner don't understand in a deep level what you mean or what you're going through, right?
I relate to that. Yeah. Yes, and I think it's interesting because there's, if you look at the offerings that are there in this world, a lot of communities, a lot of events, a lot of offerings to say, like, oh, let's be together, we can support each other, and there's this circle or that circle for entrepreneurs, for whomever. And still, I often wonder if there's enough trust and vulnerability and intimacy to actually share about what you just said about, I feel lonely in this because sounds right. Or actually, I'm not looking for an accountability partner or, or advice. Like, there's a lot of advice. Now there's, of course, ChatGPT or AI. So more people, this is another strand where the conversation could go to, but that's another thing where we can find, quote unquote, some solace, but, or where we think we can find it. But yeah, I often wonder if these offerings are enough to actually respond to this need and this longing that we have, not just to be around people and to be more productive or whatever, but actually to just support each other in that emotion that we're feeling, or in that moment of, it is tough to build something on your own, right? Or it's tough to do something out of so much heart and love and care and get a lot back, but still you're unable to fully sustain yourself financially. You still have to do other things. I know so many people, I'm one of them, but I know so many other people who feel the same way, right? It's kind of, how do we create also spaces where we actually support each other in that loneliness and in those difficult moments, rather than, just covering it up with more socializing or just more people, I guess.
How is it across genders? I mean, I think loneliness across men, especially young men, is increasing.
Yes. So if we look at the demographics overall, it is particularly younger people, as in the age groups below 30, but then there's also a segment around adolescence that is increasing a lot if we look at loneliness. So they feel more and more lonely. That said, everybody is affected, but this is an important trend to look at. And then regarding gender, yes, there is a male loneliness that that we need to look at very carefully, not just for young men, because again, it connects sort of to what we discussed about in the political realm. There's a direct connection of predominantly young men and beyond who are feeling attracted to these narratives and sort of the more extremist views.
Especially, for example, gangs members, they consider their other gangs mates like part of their family. So it means like that's where they feel the sense of belonging as well.
Yeah.
And also could be also that vulnerability. I mean, men tend to not to show vulnerability among other men. Very different than what women do. For example, I see it in the community of Hispanics, the way that Latin women are connecting and creating community is very, very different and very open. How they just go and create community and they gather and they help each other. And men are more like, shy, or they don't gather, they don't interact in the same way. And this is something that, for example, my wife always tells me, like, because you guys, you never talk about something meaningful. You just talk sometimes superficial stuff. And then you're like, hey, how's your friend? And I'm like, good. How's your hermana? I think it's good. And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't talk so much about that. Or I have another friend, he has a family and everything. And she always asks me, how's his wife? How are the children? And we're like, I don't know. Actually, we didn't speak about that now that you mention it. So it's very different how we communicate.
Yes. Yeah. I'm grateful that you're bringing this up because, yeah, the male loneliness that we're seeing, and by the way, also not to say that women aren't feeling lonely, we do, but for different reasons. But just to stay with men for a moment, I think it is important to understand it in the larger context of how men have been socialized, and again, even within the patriarchal system, right, and the structures, and how men have also been harmed by patriarchy and sort of the roles and the norms that we've created. I just co-hosted a dinner last night with two wonderful male co-hosts because I've been hosting this series of shared table dinners, and last night was a dinner for men only. So we had almost 30 men gather for a dinner, and the topic was going beyond self-reliance and looking at connection and friendship. And everything that you just mentioned was echoed there, right? In the sense of there is absolutely a longing for men to connect differently because we are humans. We all want to connect more meaningfully. And yet, maybe for men in particular, it is a bit more difficult because men have not been socialized this way. Men have been boys when men grow up, right? And there's lots of studies around this, how boys are brought up and socialized. They're kind of the idea of intimacy and vulnerability and softness, even if we want to, right? Just to fall apart sometimes emotionally, just feel like, I'm sad, I want to cry or whatever. Like that's being taken on a very early age as boys grow up around 7 or 8 in their age, and this idea of, don't cry or like put yourself together, be a man, right? Grow up, is instilled in such an early age that we shouldn't be so surprised what then happens later on in life. And that to allow yourself to then, now you're in your 30s and like, why don't you talk about your feelings, right? It's like, well, it's not that easy. You have to relearn these things again. Are we allowing for these spaces? Are men, between men, allowing themselves to fall apart, right? And ask each other these meaningful questions. It's like, why do you want to talk about this? Like, it's weird. It's such intricate and delicate space, and there's a lot that is in there. So, yeah, all that to say, I have a lot of compassion for men, and I think it's important, and I'm seeing it in many ways, that there are more spaces for men to gather just between men and connect differently and kind of, be with each other in a way that is maybe more unusual, but where everybody agrees, like, yeah, that this is actually what I want, and I am interested, and I do care, and I have a lot of love to give.
Yeah.
Just deleted some files now.
For me, what happens a lot when connecting with men, and I don't know if this is relatable for other men, is the feeling that if the other person opens up but then cries, then you as the listener, you get uncomfortable because you don't know how to react. You know how to react if a woman cries, you know how to comfort, you know how to proceed, but with a guy, sometimes it's not very clear what should you do. Normally you are like, as you said, like, pull up yourself, don't cry, come on. Like, that's your default. So sometimes I don't know if it happens to other men that you feel uncomfortable if another person shows their vulnerability, or if you used to respect that person or to see it or admire that person, and then you see it vulnerable, and then you see it again back into your level, and then maybe that creates this kind of like dissonance between what you used to believe and now who the person is in reality.
Yeah, I think you're naming that, right? This discomfort. It's kind of like, oh, what is happening there? And now what do I do? And I think that's part of this moment and this process, right? To say like, I actually don't know what to do right now. Or sometimes it's not saying anything and just being there, right? Or like touching someone's shoulder, or like just being there and holding someone in that. So not trying to run away from this or being like, okay, let's move on. Let's just, this is too uncomfortable. I cannot stand it. Just like sitting with this discomfort almost, but being with each other most of the times helps more than any comforting words that can come later, right? And I think this is beautiful if, and I think it was, this also was a theme last night in different contexts of like how are we also open to maybe quote unquote fail in front of each other sometimes, right? Not to be like, I don't have the perfect words, I don't have the perfect solution right now. I don't, because I don't know how to respond. And I also have this, right? There's also moments where I'm like, I don't have anything smart to say right now, right? I don't know. I cannot relate to your grief, or I cannot relate to your experience, and I wish I could, but I'll just be here. And maybe that's enough for this moment. So to allow ourselves to, fail in front of each other once in a while is also okay.
I went like a couple of weeks ago to a walk in a little bit in the forest with other guys, church guys, and the aim was like we're gonna have a short walk and then we're gonna talk a little bit about what's going on with us and then pray. And at the beginning, I felt like a bit the experiment a bit weird. Like so we go there and just complain about what's going on in our life. But on the other side of me thought, okay, let's do it. I will go there because it's the only opportunity to feel like in a safe space to talk about those stuff. Because there's normally like, okay, why or when, what's the right moment, and the framework was like quite well, like very perfectly suited because it was like, okay, other fathers who might be going through the same issues as I am going through, right? So it was a very productive thing to just being intentional, and everyone is going to share what's going good, but also what's being challenging. And then you realize that a lot of them sometimes have the same issue, like overwhelmed with the schedule, work, kids, everything, or other ones having also like back problems and everything. When I was seeing from the far, okay, you look very strong, and then now you say you have back problems and pains, and like, okay, I don't feel like so bad about myself of not being that strong. And then at the end, the praying thing after, I think it helped because I think it's like this kind of, you don't know what to say, like to comfort the other person, but then it's like, okay, we'll just pray, and then you just put in the needs or the problems of everyone in a superior self, right? So
yes,
that was like very interesting thing that I think sometimes is needed.
It's so needed, so beautiful, right? To what you described, like to give permission to have like there's a space to do exactly this. So it's also clear in terms of the expectations, but then that not expectations, but the to allow yourself then to, okay, we are here to share with one another, and it kind of creates this common space, and it levels the playing field in a way. But then also the nature part, I think, is important, like going out for a walk or something like this, and praying. So that's what I mean when I say, right, connecting to something, to the world, to something, not just other people and other beings, but like something greater. So that can be spiritual. Nature itself can be spiritual, right? Just that I feel in the secular world, of course, one other reason for modern loneliness is because we live in a world where in large parts we've lost kind of the touch, at least in this part of the world, lost touch with rituals, with a sense of, okay, we're not really alone and we have something to have faith in also, and to feel connected to on a spiritual level.
Yeah, true. That's one of the things. I don't know many religions on the deeper level, but at least in Christianity, the main premise there is like you're not alone. Where like
Mm-hmm.
God walks with you or Jesus walks with you.
Yes, yeah.
So there's the feeling like even though I feel alone or I am alone, I'm actually not alone. Someone is walking with me. There was also about I don't know, remember if it was a comedian or who was saying this. He was saying, when I was a kid, my parents always forced me to church, and I hated it. I really hated it. But then I had to go there every Sunday, no matter what, every Sunday to church. But now, as I'm over 30 and I'm struggling to make friends, now I get it. Because how beautiful is that you go every Sunday and you meet your friends and they're going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be traveling or doing something else. They have to go to church. So they go every Sunday and you meet your friends. How beautiful is that? And I thought, true. Yeah. Nobody is like doing some bike tour or whatever, and therefore they cannot meet. They are there. You drink some coffee, you go someone's home, eat lunch. How beautiful is that, right?
Yes, yes. It's so important. And this fabric, right? This is what we're losing, sort of not just the ritual, but like the fabric of spaces where we do gather and really come together as community, where community is not just a commodified thing, right? Or a product or a membership or like another thing that I have to pay money for and then I receive people or time or their attention or whatever. But it's like we show up because we want to and we are of service to something greater, but also to each other. And that's to be of service as in to give is so human and so essential and probably the most genuine and nourishing way to connect because it's based on reciprocity. So I deeply connect with that. I since last year been practicing with the Zen Buddhist tradition of Plum Village, so under the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh and the tradition Plum Village. So and there the practice is all about practicing in community. It is all about right, sitting in meditation together, mindfully eating together, walking together. It's all in community and in interrelatedness, and this idea of we don't just have each other, but like we want to, right? We want to show for one another. We want to practice for each other and something larger that we believe in, and that is not necessarily following a dogma or an ideology or anything, but it's something that wants to bring balance or equanimity to life and this moment. So it's a lot about presence. So
yeah. As I told you at the beginning, though, how I get to know about you was because of this clip with Dima, where you were talking about that Berlin, capital of loneliness. I have heard other people say London is the capital of loneliness. What is this particular characteristic that makes, for example, Berlin a loneliness capital?
I think Dima put that catchy headline. I'm not sure if I would agree anymore with myself on saying there is a capital of loneliness and that's Berlin. But nevertheless, why is Berlin there is a loneliness in this city? Berlin is an incredibly transient place, right? It's a very unfinished place, both in terms of there's always construction going on, it's always in progress, it's just never going to be a city that is just going to be where you know what to expect, kind of. It is changing. It is kind of that energy. So there is some restlessness in that and also some aliveness, because it's like, wow, I've been so long in the city and there's so many places I still haven't seen and people and so forth. But I think in that transientness, there's for many people, there's also the sense of I want some sense of rootedness and stability, and I'm looking. So I'm looking for something to feel grounded in. So
And people coming and going doesn't help so much.
exactly.
And the dating culture also might be like a wine night stand culture also doesn't help.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's everything kind of mirrors back, right, in a way, and to the nature of this city in a way. It kind of amplifies that. And I also have to say, like, there's a lot of myths about this city that we also amplify, and where we create narratives that already exist and we just perpetuate them to say, like, it's impossible to find love in Berlin. It is such, it is such a lonely place, or it is so dark, and it is so, and it is, yes, it's dark, and yes, it's hard to find love, and dating all around the world. This is a global phenomenon, right? Has become more difficult because of different reasons. And at the same time, there's also a lot of proof and stories and examples to say there's also genuine connection and willingness to maybe shift those myths, or find connection on a more deeper level. So the question, I think, for me is always like, you cannot expect it from a place or something external. You have to then.
It's like if you perpetuate those narratives, then of course they're going to affect you. It's like, Germany's so cold and gray. And the other day I read something that said, okay, I will start romanticizing all the stuff that I don't like. I say, I like this kind of like foggy morning, this kind of misty kind of feeling, how that cold air feels in my face. I like it, and I like to enjoy that fresh air and fresh cold air, and trying to see it in that way, like romanticize, instead of saying, so gray. And so I'm feeling feels like a cozy day of drinking a hot tea and reading a book. And then maybe when you start changing those narratives, things start I don't know, the outcome starts to become different. Then you're not going to be depressed. You're just maybe going to be nostalgic or melancholic or like creative, maybe in a way. Before you mention AI, people sometimes also are starting to turn to ask for advice on their relationships or couple, or they're using AI as a therapist, and even people are starting to fall in love with their AI. What's your opinion on that?
It's interesting because this is a phenomenon, as in humans falling in love or connecting emotionally with machines, it's not very new. However, now, and because of OpenAI and OpenAI's ChatGPT launch, since now 2 years or what it is?
3 years.
3 years already. Yeah, 3 years. This technology has become accessible to everyone. Lots of issues with that. And I think the way that, we, more and more people relate to AI shows, again, it reflects a deeper need that is not met, right? It's like there's a reason why we feel compelled to talk to ChatGPT about our problems and our issues and our most intimate longings, perhaps our insecurities, and we're looking for advice. We're looking for ultimately affirmation and validation. Right? It's kind of like, I'm not stupid, right? Like, that was not a stupid text that I sent. Like, was it? Please tell me. And of course, I have many issues with it, but like the crucial piece is that not only we must not forget that, of course, this is not a reciprocal connection. It is very much artificial, right? There's this term artificial intimacy, but also this technology, and just to stay with ChatGPT, has been trained to kind of always compliment us, right? To always affirm us, no matter what. And it's also not just that, always going to keep us engaged, no matter what. It's always going to say, is there anything else I can do for you, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't you want to tell me a bit more about that situation? Should we break it? It's like, it always will, because it wants more data, of course, and it wants us to stay longer in that loop. So I think that
it's
is
manipulating us.
Yes. And it's ultimately really dangerous, especially when it is being used by people who are already feeling quite vulnerable and open and kind of not knowing where else should I go with this, other than you. And that said, I'm also not saying that it's all bad and it's all evil and we shouldn't and whatever, because I know it's also helpful for a lot of people. So I often go into Reddit threads to read about these topics, for example, where there's many people who say and share their stories about how genuinely talking to an AI has helped them to shift something in their real life. And it's not that black and white, right? And at the same time, I am deeply concerned about the dependency that we have already developed, actually.
Yeah.
Emotional dependency, right? To say like, ooh, I feel quite attached, and what do I do? Where do I go if I don't have my AI to talk to? So in the best, in my best case scenario always for, if I think about AI, is like if we can use AI more to mirror back to us, right? What it is really that we're longing, and how can we perhaps pursue that or shift that in our actual life and with each other, and how do we almost cultivate those relational skills with one another and not with a machine, with AI. That would be more helpful, I think, rather than to escape because it's easier, it's accessible, always there, and it's comforting.
It adds another layer of this kind of comfortness that people are, or like, for example, a lot of, and this happens with men, I don't know other examples, but like they go to pornography to have like the instant satisfaction and not to have to look for a partner. They go to video games to have this sense of achievement without actually needing to achieve anything in the real world. They get that feeling in a video game. You want to have that sense of connection, then you're going to go for maybe an AI that gives you that sense of feeling. So anything that you can do from the comfort of your couch is what people are tending to do, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about the Oneliness Project? What it is? When did you start it? What's your mission?
Yeah. Yes, basically to everything that you just described so beautifully, right? To provide a counterpoint to the many superficial, often illusionary solutions to your loneliness. So oneliness is an approach to say, how can we first find a different language and understanding of loneliness? So one part of my work with the Oneliness Project is to write, have conversations on my podcast, but then also to speak and bring this topic into different communities or organizations, to say we have to broaden and deepen our understanding of loneliness and understand the impact of it, and at the same time the very human need and beauty almost that I see in this experience and this moment of, once we recognize it, once we accept it, we can then also say, okay, we do need more community, but what does that really mean? We do want to connect differently. What does that mean? So that's one part. And then the other is related to this, creating spaces, so gatherings, where I bring people together, both in person but also online, to both reflect on some of these topics. So, for example, we just talked about AI, right? How is AI affecting my life and my relationships? But then also to learn and cultivate these relational capacities again. By that I mean how to listen more deeply, more actively, how to sit with discomfort, how to be more present, how to resist the urge to, do one of those easy things that I could do from the comfort of my couch, and actually go out and feel connected with wherever I am through small interactions, even if it's just the barista that gives me my, coffee, to have a human interaction again and see how that feels. So the Oneliness Project is really kind of a living organism, to see like language, narrative around loneliness, and ways of how we bring that in conversation, and then how do we cultivate a sense of oneliness again? What are the skills, capacities that we need?
I was thinking about before when we were talking about how we see, like, say, loneliness and what was before like loneliness, and that how loneliness became this kind of shameful thing. And even across cultures, there's a very big difference. I don't know if it happens the same in Asian cultures, but at least in Latin cultures, it happens that if you go to eat alone, that's a very shameful thing to do, or going to the cinema by yourself is like, and I started to notice that here was more normal, just kind of like I'm alone, or I'm going to go to the park and read a book alone. Those were things that completely changed, and I think that was already a big step forward about like loneliness and not loneliness.
Yes, right? Yeah, that's great, and I'm happy you're mentioning it because I think it's important to say that often we think that when we feel lonely, we need other people, we need to connect more, we have to eat together. And yes, sometimes that is exactly what we need. But more often than we think, loneliness also stems from a sense of feeling disconnected with yourself, which then leads to the question, am I being comfortable? Can I be comfortable with myself, with my own company? Right? Even if there's no phone to look at and no reels. Like, I mean, actually being alone and with my thoughts and with my feelings and with my presence. Am I enough, to hang out with in the park to read a book? Or is that not the case? And I think this is an important practice, and for me has been one as well, where I'm like, okay, I'm challenging myself, for a couple of years and doing things on my own, but not just in terms of like sometimes what I see on social media of like, yeah, solitude is so amazing. It's like, no, sometimes it really sucks, but if you can still be with yourself and have compassion and care for the moments where you're like, I am alone and I'm okay with being alone, but I am feeling sad, or I'm feeling frustrated, or I feel stressed or overwhelmed, but I will not, look for the easy solution out. And I will just care for this need, and maybe even care for my loneliness. I think that's a big, big piece in moving towards loneliness. And culturally, there's differences for reasons, and that goes to social norms. So it's interesting, for example, in Vietnam or China, for example, they're both very collectivist cultures. Is like you usually eat together, right? Family and friends and so forth. However, now if you go to China now, it's such a incredibly fast-moving, developing country. A lot is now delivery, right? The economy is basically sustained on delivery drivers, largely, which is crazy, which means that people are eating at home alone, actually, or they go out to just get something. See a lot of people, and there's no need anymore to even interact with the person who gives you the food if you go out to be in a space sometimes, because everything is online, everything is through 2 apps basically, and people just come there and they eat, and you no need to order, right? Just click on your phone and they just keep scrolling and eating at the same time. And I was like, what's happening?
It's a big change,
right? So there's that huge shift as well, just related to technology. But even here, right, we have to navigate the different ways of both being comfortable with ourselves, but how are we with ourselves? So not with our phone scrolling and not really present, but
true. And also, generalizing, maybe Asian cultures have so different, right?
Yes.
South Korea they have that problem since decades already of like very individualistic loneliness. They have the more the declining birth rates, as well as Japan, for example, as well. So for some countries, like the advance in technology has been very bad for
and
for the
also
community feeling.
culturally, right? It's kind of this huge pressure to perform. I mean, that's both the case in China, but then also in South Korea, Japan, in these cultures where work culture is. We haven't talked about that, but that's another huge driver for loneliness, right? The way that not only people feel lonely at work, but also because of the culture of productivity and output and busyness, and having to hustle and having to do something and having no time in a way, or perceive, right, no time to be in relationship differently, to care for yourself, to do all of those things, because you have to work, you have to be this kind of person, you have to go through success, and you need to follow all of those norms. So I think that's another part that is deeply related to the sense of loneliness and suffering for a lot of people.
Have you, because maybe you're more connected to that part of the world or to that culture, do they see that as a problem? Because originally, or like from decades or centuries, I think was never that individualistic. The culture was like very collective and communities and everything, and now has been shifting. Is there an awareness in this society, or
there is with the shift of generations, as often the case, and just seeing, as we are seeing here as well, burnout rates, right? Young people rebelling against this culture, not wanting to compensate their life just for a job or just to hustle, and just say, yeah, maybe we want different. We want to live on different values, right? Other things are important to us. So there is a shift happening, and at the same time, there's also the reality that really clashes with the necessity and not having the quote unquote privilege, right, to even think about these things, because it's like, well, I still need to pay my rent, I have to feed my family, whatever it is, I have to support my family. So there is a shift happening, and at the same time, there's a lack of like public discourse still and open spaces, which again goes more into the political realm. Why? But it's more difficult to find these spaces. So what you see is often online. Actually, that's where social media is actually very helpful, right? Or forums like Reddit or others that they use then in China or South Korea or other countries respectively, where people actually feel safe enough to share these things online, to say like, I'm actually miserable, or I don't want to do this anymore, and I have to take care of my mental well-being, or whatever it is. So yeah, there's a shift starting, but the reality is still different.
Yeah, or the previous generations, they are rooted on that, like on that culture, right? Because
Exactly.
I mean, at least South Korea and Japan has been like years and decades like this kind of work culture of like all in, right? And I think, I mean, there's a lot of Koreans coming to Mexico and they fall in love because of that. I think the contrast on the hustle culture. Of course, in Mexico you work a lot, but the level, I think, of pressure that they describe that they live in Korea is very different. Because in Mexico, yeah, you can work a lot, and yeah, just for the sake of working a lot, or because yes, you have to. But I have the feeling that for Koreans, it's like they have to be successful. They have to. I mean, we see it in, I don't know how visible is here in Germany, but in the US, like there's some cultures that they need to go to Ivy League university. Right. They need to be the best in school. They need to play the violin. Like they have like this has to be like that culture, right? Yeah. So that's of course like doesn't contribute, but I feel like the more I've connected with my community here, like with people of my own language and with the podcast, I have this feeling like, okay, I'm not alone. Before I used to feel like I feel very, very lonely, because as a migrant, that's the first thing that you feel. Like you come to a new country and then it's like, well, okay, everything is so different. Everyone is different. I feel alone. Now, through the podcast and through connecting with my community, I feel like more connected with people that I feel like, okay, they're more like me in that way. Yeah. Looking back on everything about the loneliness that you felt before and the communities that now you have built and the life that you have now, what's the one message you hope someone in Berlin or in Germany will carry with them after this conversation?
Ooh. I hope the simple truth that we all need each other.
Yeah.
We all need each other, and showing up for others is a way to show up for yourself, and vice versa. And that also with that, moments of loneliness are okay, and that they will pass. And yeah, that they're not alone in that.
Great. Monika Jiang, thanks for coming to the podcast.
Thank you so much.